What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another Swing for the Fences episode here on Run Pure Sports. It's Wednesday, August 14th. We're talking tonight's 11-game big baseball slate for a Wednesday night. I'm Draft Cheat, of course, and today, as usual, joined on Wednesday by Third and Schlong. Bryce, how you doing on this Wednesday afternoon?
I'm great. Just watching some soccer, getting ready to kick off that season, and then we have real football back in our lives in a week and a half. College football starts, so it's getting to the fun point of year where, as much as I love baseball, probably not quite as much as you. You get into the window where you just have so many sports going on. It's just a really, really fun time.
Yeah, I definitely love baseball, but I'm also more than ready for some football weekends. College football, of course, first, and then NFL not far behind. Got preseason going on, and starting to feel really like football season finally. We're still enjoying the baseball in the baseball streets, but it's certainly what they call the dog days of summer or whatever. Where it's a long season in baseball. Still got almost 2 months to go before the playoffs, so we'll keep on grinding. You do start to see some of these teams starting to run out of pitching. We had a pretty big slate yesterday. It was tough to find even three guys that I liked. I ended up two of the good ones, and then Mr. Blackburn let me down. He had a pretty rough outing, but pitching doesn't look that much better to me today, honestly. It is one of those where everybody playing DFS has got the same choices, and whoever gets the best lineup wins. But it's tough to feel too confident in many of these pitchers. We'll go through them all, of course, as we go game by game through the slate, as we always do. Should be noted this slate does start half an hour earlier. There's actually 5-6 games that start prior to the normal 7:05, 7:10 lock Eastern time. So certainly try to get done with this show on time and get to building those lineups, because we got a slate that starts heavy very early on. With that, Bryce, let's get into the first game of the slate. It is the Washington Nationals and Baltimore Orioles. This one in Baltimore. Weather-wise, looks pretty average, I would say, for this type of year. 80, 85 degrees, a little bit of humidity, a little bit of wind blowing in. Nothing crazy here. DJ Hers going for the Nationals. He's been actually kind of surprisingly solid here in his rookie year. And then Dean Kramer going for Baltimore. Hasn't pitched super well as of late. But both these guys kind of, I think, league average-ish or close to it. Arms, of course, the Orioles offense is a much better offense, also way more expensive. I don't necessarily see a ton here that I'm going to go to on an 11-game slate. Maybe some individual bats, lefties against Kramer. I could see playing some of those guys. But what about you, Bryce? First game on the slate here, Washington and Baltimore.
Yeah, I like more small stacks in this game. It's a huge slate. If I have 150, I'd keep Orioles in. I probably wouldn't keep Nationals in as part of my 5-mans. I would have Nationals in as a 3-man. I mean, even last night, you saw, Oakland, for example, was it was a super weird slate because, you needed Soto in your team because he hit 3 home runs, but you didn't want any of the other Yankees really. So it was Yankees, small Yankee stacks, and which is why I don't like to make my path too narrow. Excluding too many 5-man stacks. But, when there's 22 teams to stack, you obviously can't get all of them. Washington will not be one of the ones I get to. Don't hate Dean Kramer in this spot. Not pitching, as you said, is super average today. If I'm playing 1 to 3 teams, he's not going to make my teams. But, if I'm playing 150, he would make my pool today. Probably 5 to 8%, something like that. Nothing crazy. Favorite individual bats in this game. James Wood against him is definitely it for me with the Nationals. CJ Abrams, it looks like he's coming around to me. You do want these lefties. So if you want to pay up a bit for some of the Nationals expensive ones, that would certainly be contrarian. And then on the other side, I mean, Austin Slater's a huge pinch hit risk. If they bring in a righty, he will get pinch hit for. He is minimum price. I don't exclude those guys in my 150, But if I'm like hand building a team and you have an Orioles stack, Austin Slater would not be on mine. It's pretty much the most guaranteed pinch hit risk you can get. Favorite play there, point per dollar, probably Jimenez. I do prefer Orioles 3-mans as opposed to the 5-man, but I can see Orioles 5-mans here, and I will have no DJ Hurts. He's looked decent, but he's not going to pitch deep into this game. I mean, I think his total upside is like low 20s, which I don't, on a 22 pitcher slate, I don't really feel the need to go there. And I think he has a ton of downside.
Yeah, I'm with you for the most part. I'm not going to play either of these pitchers in my 5 lineups that I'm rocking tonight. Would be more likely to play Kramer, of course, but I'm not going to get to either of these guys. Kramer, I think, is an okay play, but nothing to get excited about. I'm with you on the individual bats. Kramer has some pretty severe lefty-righty splits over the last couple of seasons. Lefty's hitting him very, very hard. So, yeah, you nailed 2 of them. Wood, I think, is my favorite. Abrams, I think, would be second. And then I do like Luis Garcia down there in the 502, having a pretty good season. He's expensive. Actually, all 3 of them kind of are, but I think they're pretty good plays, and I'm sure we'll go fairly low-owned on this slate. Interesting notes for the Orioles. They are starting 2 lefties, well, 3 lefties, but 2 guys who normally don't start against lefties, in Colton Cowser and Jackson Holliday, which usually means those guys will be safe for the whole game, right? They're starting lefty on lefty. Obviously not going to get pinch hit for if a righty comes in the game, and even if it's a lefty, well, they already chose to start him against a left-handed starting pitcher. So that bottom of the Orioles lineup, Eloy, Cowser, Mayo, Holliday, I think is interesting. You could throw in Santana there for the 5 through 9 stack. Makes a lot of sense to me, especially with the decreased pinch hitting risk. I'm sure low ownership down there at the bottom of the stack, and mostly low prices, right? Santana and Cowser are expensive, but Eloy, Mayo, and Holliday are pretty cheap. So I do kind of like that bottom of the order Baltimore stack a little bit as a way to get a little bit off the beaten path today. But let's get to the next game, St. Louis and Cincinnati. Emilio Pagan going to open this game for Cincinnati. I would only expect 1 inning, 2 tops out of him, but probably just 1. And then Carson Spears, rather, going to start this game. He's been, again, surprisingly pretty decent for the Reds. Still, though, coming in relief, 7,400 against the Cardinals team that has done a good job, especially lately, of putting the ball in play. The Cincinnati pitchers are off my radar. Mild interest here in Kyle Gibson. I don't like that he's going on the road to Cincinnati, which is a good place to hit. That should be true tonight. Hot, humid, all that stuff. But I do think on this slate, Gibson is okay at 7,900. Does have some strikeout upside, of course, against the Reds. But I am worried definitely about the long ball in Cincinnati for Gibson. So second game, again, not necessarily a ton here that I love. Reds lefties look fine. I don't think a Cardinals stack is crazy against Pagan and Spears, but where do you stand, Schlong, on Cardinals and Reds here?
So we have the Cardinals as our second highest owned stack here on Sabre. I think that's too high for them personally. I like them, but not that much. They're just cheap. They're on the road and they're in Cincinnati facing, a bullpen game for the most part. So, I mean, I see what's to like there, but like compare their team total to like their DFS ownership, I think it's slightly off. I mean, they're just a ton of offenses that I do want exposure to on this slate. So like I'm likely to be a little more spread out after the Yankees. I think they're the clear number 1 offense here. So yeah, I'll likely be under them between, 8 to 10% 5-mans probably, if it'll get that high. I do prefer them as a full stack as opposed to 3-mans or 1-offs. Favorite bats here probably be Contreras and Arenado. Goldschmidt's dropped down in the order, so he might go a little bit lower owned just because he's 5K, kind of near the bottom. Victor Scott, I think, is a pretty solid salary saver here at 2.3K. makes the wraparound very cheap if you play him. Moving over to Cincinnati, prefer them more as 3-mans, but I could see a 5-man Cincinnati here. It's really good hitting weather. I think this side of the game goes way lower owned just because they're more expensive. They're facing a better pitcher and they're at home instead of on the road. So, I kind of want to be my exposure to Cincinnati will be slightly below what I am to St. Louis, but nothing crazy. Like the ownership projections have a huge gap in between them. All have a very, very small one. I think you kind of have to include Ellie in your stacks at this point. Guy just has so much upside. It's, guys like him who can run too. It's just really hard to exclude him from any type of stacking in Cincinnati. So other than him, there's not bats that specifically stand out to me. I mean, Tyler Stevenson, 4.1K catcher is a really solid option at the catcher spot here, I think, in any type of format. So I think they play well in 3-mans or 5-mans. And I'll have a little bit of Gibson, probably like a Dean Kramer type of ownership to me, like 5 to 10%. Nothing wild here. Have no interest in Cincinnati pitching.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Looking at some of the splits here for the St. Louis, it does make sense why they could gain some ownership. Spears has struggled against lefties. This is like by far the best home run park, especially for left-handed bats. So, yeah, we have a question. Burleson as a one-off. I think he's a very strong play, probably the strongest play overall on the Cardinals in my eyes. And then, Brendan Donovan, Lars Nootbaar is cheap down there in the 7-hole. But even, Contreras and Goldschmidt, maybe Arenado, all these guys have some upside, certainly in Cincinnati, given the favorable home run conditions especially. So I do think in this park, though, if you don't want to go crazy with either team, trying to pick off home runs does make sense given how home run friendly this park is in general. And, to your point about Ellie, I mean, I feel like stolen bases, too, are very correlated with, like, the stack going off. You get guys on the paths running and all of a sudden, easier to drive in, runs, RBIs, all that stuff kind of seems like it can accumulate in a hurry if people are taking off on the base paths. So certainly if you're stacking Cincinnati, we shouldn't even really need to say it, but make sure you get Ellie De La Cruz in there. It's going to be hard for them to get there without Cruz having at least a decent game. Cleveland and the Chicago Cubs up next. This one at Progressive Field in Cleveland. Modest weather, 70s, some humidity, some wind blowing in. Nothing to really worry about either way. It is going to be Alex Cobb making just his second appearance of the 2024 baseball season. First one did not go especially well against the Twins. 9 hits over 4 2/3, 4 earned runs, home run, just 1 strikeout. He did get 12 ground balls compared to just 3 fly balls, so I didn't see that start, but probably pretty unlucky with the ground ball hits that he gave up. But nevertheless, I do kind of think these veteran pitchers coming off of injury all year, then they got to step in the in the middle of August here and try to get up to speed. I think it's kind of tough. So I wouldn't be surprised if Cobb continued to struggle. Jameson Taillon going for the Chicago Cubs has been pretty good this year, but he does have tendencies that kind of match up well with the Guardians. I think one, much worse against lefties. The Guardians will start 4 straight lefties in this lineup, and I think 6 overall. And you can also run pretty wild on Jameson Taillon. The Guardians have quite a bit of speed. So I'm not sure where they're going to end up ownership-wise, Bryce, but I like this Guardians lineup quite a bit. Frankly, mostly the top half of it with the power and the speed and the left-handed bats against Taillon. I think they profile pretty well. The Cubs also only with 1 lefty in the pen. He threw 22 pitches yesterday, so might be available, but very well may not pitch in this game. I think kind of a sneaky good spot here for the Cleveland Bats. What about you, Bryce? What are you doing with the Guardians and the Cubs?
I love the Cleveland call. I've been, stacking against Taillon hasn't made me tons of money this year, but you can run against him, as you said. The guys that really stand out to me here are obviously the guys who run, Brennan, Ramirez, Jimenez, and Lane Thomas. Really, really good 4-man on FanDuel, and just toss a 5th in there on DraftKings. And I expect them to go super, super low owned. I'll probably be around 5% Guardian stacks here, which on this slate should be above the field. I don't really think batters in this game, or pitchers for that matter, go owned at all. Italian will not make my pool. Alex Cobb will, just because he's 6.9K and the Cubs can strike out. I think his first start was super unlucky. That said, I'm not going nuts on him or anything. It's more of like I'm keeping him in my pool as opposed to like I'm taking him out type of deal. Like if I was playing, 20 lineups, he might make one of them. So that being said, I don't really like the Cubs here. It's not the best spot for bats. Guardians have a really good pen. Even if Cobb goes, 5 innings, which is probably what they want out of him here. I think it's going to be tough sledding for the Cubs, and I think there are better spots to attack on a large slate.
Yeah, maybe wrote off Cobb a little bit too easily. On this slate, like you can get 15 points out of $6,900 Alex Cobb. You're taking it, I think. So, yeah, I don't hate that. They did let him throw 82 pitches despite him not pitching well, so you got to assume he's more or less a full go. Yeah. I don't hate the Alex Cobb call. Maybe put him in the pool. No, again, nothing crazy with Alex Cobb. He's worth considering. There's just so few options. Not going to be on Tyone. I'm glad to hear you're on the Guardians. And, I hadn't gotten to ownership quite yet, but looking like sub 10% and sub 5% for a lot of the lineup, which seems pretty good to me in a spot that I really, really like. I think they set up nearly perfectly to exploit the weaknesses of Jameson Tyone. So I'm in on the Guardians with you, Bryce. Seattle and Detroit up next. Going to be kind of a bullpenish game for the Tigers. They will start with Bo Brieske. He's on 5 days rest here. He threw 3 innings against San Francisco 5 days ago. Pitched well, 49 pitches. Actually managed to get 16 fantasy points across those 3 innings. So did pitch well there. Maybe they push him to 4 innings here, but I think 3 or 4 innings is the most likely thing for Brieske. For me, takes him out of play, even against Seattle, even at the low price point. I just can't do it for 40 or 50 pitches. And then it looks like Brian Sammons is scheduled to be the long reliever. He could, I think, pitch a number of innings, if the situation breaks right. But again, hard to trust it. You don't even know for sure that he's going to come into the game after Brieske, depending on how it goes. So I can't play either of the Detroit pitchers. Brian Wu, however, is definitely in consideration. Has pitched really, really well recently. Actually faced the same Tigers team in Seattle, which, of course, makes a big difference. He pitched pretty well in that game, 7 strikeouts, did give up 3 earned runs over 6 2/3. They've let him go further in games than they were previously, 92 and 88 pitches in the last 2, and he is generally a pretty efficient pitcher. I do worry that the rug could be pulled out from us at any time, Bryce, and he's removed early with his elbow injury that he's always had, or just after 65 pitches for no apparent reason. And I don't love that he's on the road, especially. I mean, he's got almost double the production fantasy points per game when he's at home compared to when he's on the road. So some question marks for Brian Wu, but on this slate, you almost have to kind of overlook him and say, I'll play him anyway. I do think he'll be one of the higher owned pitchers. Curious what you're doing with Brian Wu in the rest of this game, Bryce.
Yeah, I think Brian Wu will be the lowest owned of like these top 3 guys of Blanco, Robbie Ray, and him, priced at least. I think Blanco will come in the highest, with Ray being second and him third. So I probably want to be around 25% Brian Wu here, and then see how the field shakes out on it. I assume that's going to be over him on 22 pitcher slate. I would guess we haven't projected for 18%, which to me sounds about right. So, I think Wu's a good tournament play. You mentioned his pitch count issues and whatnot. On this slate, it's fine. He's 9K, doesn't break the bank. It's not like there's an 11K ace out there that we really want to pay for today. So, I'm kind of pricing different a little bit on pitching today, simply because even if you choose the 2 most expensive guys, you can still field a team that plays like a couple of the best hitters in baseball. So Price isn't a huge issue to me today. So I'm willing to take some risk here on Wu's pitch count because he does have upside. And, Tigers team, I mean, they went nuts yesterday, but, they can still strike out a lot. It is negative park shift. If he was at home here, he'd probably be at 40%. So I don't mind him on the road here, tournament play. But yeah, if I was playing 3 teams, he'd definitely make 1. So that's kind of where I stand with him. I think there are better spots to attack than the Tigers. Even for leverage, I personally wouldn't play Detroit on this slate. I'm not going to click them out of my pool on the 150, but I won't have any Detroit 5-man stacks here. Seattle, I'll use sparingly. Tigers bullpen game, I don't hate it, don't love it. Somewhat indifferent, probably around 5%. Using them more as stacks as opposed to one-offs here. If you had to choose some one-offs, obviously they have some high upside bats here in Rosarena, Riley, and Julio. So yeah, I mean, Robles is super cheap leading off. I think he's a solid play. Like, yeah, don't mind them, don't hate them. I wish I had more of a take, but not playing any Detroit pitching here. So probably around 5% on the Mariners for me and slightly over Brian Wu.
Yeah, we're similar. I don't hate the Mariners, but not targets for me. Not playing Detroit, I'm with you. I don't really see, I don't know, it would be like Carpenter and Cole Keith, 2-3 hitters if you really wanted to get crazy, but I'm not excited about those guys either. And I think, 15 to 20% for Wu, if that's what it turns out to be. It's right where Sabres got it. I think he's pretty solid on this slate, despite some concerns with pitch count stuff on the road. They do have a very pitcher-friendly umpire there too. That could be a tiebreaker for some people playing Brian Wu. I'll probably play him on at least 1, maybe 2 of my 5 lineups tonight. Brian Wu. We're not going to have a ton else from Tigers and Mariners. Philadelphia and Miami are up next. We've got Tyler Phillips going for the Phillies. He's been good in most of his starts, but is coming off a little bit of a rough one against the Dodgers, and the one prior to that in Seattle, of all places, got absolutely crushed. I think I had him on that slate. It was either off the main slate or I had him because I would have played Tyler Phillips in Seattle for sure. I've got some interest here, despite the rough couple of starts, primarily driven, of course, by the matchup against the Marlins, who traded a couple of their best bats. They just don't have, frankly, much left at this point, especially the bottom of the lineup. It's absolutely brutal for the Marlins. So I do think Tyler Phillips, 8K, is in play. Looks like he'll be around 10% owned. That feels like a pretty decent play to me at 10% owned. So interest in Phillips. Again, I don't think he's a world beater or an ace or anything, but on this slate, I do think he's solid. And then Edwin Cabrera going for the Miami Marlins. He's really wild, does have good stuff, does have good strikeout stuff. He is stretched out. He threw 106 pitches last time out. He has pitched well 2 games in a row, Bryce. So 6K, I certainly don't like the matchup going into Philly, but for a talented pitcher who's going to throw, looks like 100 pitches, low price point, and I assume, right around 12%. I think he's a GPP play for sure, but I think he's a decent one. Of course, Philly stacks look pretty good to me as well. So I think there's multiple ways you could play this one. What are you doing, Bryce, with Miami Marlins, Philadelphia Phillies?
Yeah. If you look at Cabrera's props today, he has a pretty high K prop. It's 5.5 juiced over. But he also has a super high team total against him. So these are spots where I like to be over on both sides. Kind of cover. It sounds a little silly to tout both sides, but we do it probably on a couple games of slate, and it's in high variance pitching. He could come out, and if you told me that he scored 30 DraftKings points, it wouldn't surprise me. And if you told me he scored negative, 8, it wouldn't particularly surprise me either. I do prefer Philly more as stacks as opposed to one-offs here due to his propensity to walk people. Like you're hoping for the home runs with people on base. It's kind of how you get to guys like Cabrera. Your batters will strike out some. So, yeah, I like Philly on this slate. I don't think they really go owned here. So, yeah, I'd probably be, 10 to 15% Cabrera and like probably 10% Philly stacks. I don't think we need to go to the Marlins here. I do have some interest in Phillips. I think he's pretty solid today. I don't absolutely love him, but at 10%, likely going to be over between 15 and 20% for me. Phillips here. The Marlins suck, but you can still hit a couple bombs. You've seen Marlins one-offs like still slightly get there. So like I'm not removing them from the pool. I won't play any Marlins 5-mans, but I could see some 3-mans and one-offs. My favorite ones here would be Jesus Sanchez at 3.3K. And he's kind of the one that stands out to me here if you're trying to play for the one-off. But I think that they're fine as one-offs or 3-mans.
Yeah, I was going to say Jesus Sanchez looks number one to me. And then Scary Creation says Jake Berger has been really heating up recently. And Phillips, I'd have to go look back at his minor league stats to say for sure. But at least so far, he's been hit really hard by right-handed bats, same-handed hitters in his brief time in the minor leagues. 323 ISO given up. It's only over 15 innings against righties, but you don't normally see a number that high over any decent sample size. So, yeah, Jake Berger, Jesus Sanchez actually seems like a kind of an interesting little mini stack there in the 2-3. Will be low owned. I think it's got upside. If it hits, it's probably via the long ball. So even though I like Phillips, you can play both those guys. And, yeah, this game just as one, you can definitely kind of play both sides of my 5 lineups. I'll probably have one share of Tyler Phillips in there. I'll probably have one Philly stack. One share of Edward Cabrera, I meant to say, and then one Philly stack as well. Probably just one share of Tyler Phillips for me too. So, yeah, obviously not on the same lineup with the Cabrera and Philly stack, but I do think there are paths with the way Cabrera pitches, who's really one of the more volatile guys, right? He can get the strikeouts, but his implosions are going to be really bad with the walk rates. Gives up his fair share of home runs as well. Next game up is Houston and Tampa Bay. We should see the chalk pitcher of the night in this game in Ronel Blanco. Surprise season kind of out of nowhere for the Houston Astros. He's continued to pitch well. The upside has mostly not been there. Just one game over 20 fantasy points since June 28th. So it's been a lot of, 12s and 15s, 16s for Ronel Blanco, which isn't bad. And, on this slate, I think would be honestly okay. But at 9,300 as the chalk pitcher, some question marks there. Sabres actually moved his ownership down throughout the days. They got him down between 25 and 30%. I think it was up near 35 last time I checked this morning. So that's a little bit interesting to me. He is a big favorite, is Ronel Blanco in this one. Actually, not a big favorite, minus 124. A little surprised it's not higher up. Zach Littell going for Tampa. Decent pitcher in his own right. I don't think he's in play against Houston, but he's good enough where I'm probably not going to go to Houston stacks. Biggest question in this game from where I'm sitting, Bryce, is what do you do with Ronel Blanco, who is going to be one of the more popular pitchers on this slate?
Probably have around 30% Blanco. Kind of match the field, maybe slightly over. I think he's really good cash play, and guys like that can get there in tournaments on a slate like this. Where it's kind of hard to find pitchers with tons of upside. Like if you tell me I get 20 out of Blanco, like that you could still easily find him on the winner at night, even at 9,200. It's not like he's breaking the bank or anything. So he has a 6.5K prop. It's choosed pretty heavily under. So I could easily see 6 innings, 5Ks, win, 1 or 2 earned, and that's fine on the slate for me. It's not Not my favorite spot, not my least favorite spot. Don't really love batters against him. Don't really love batters against Littell. Littell would probably make my 150 pool. I'm not excluding him, but I can't imagine I end up getting much of him. Probably 5% below there against Houston. I'm trying not to exclude like tons of these pitchers, like the mid-tier pitchers, just because like there's not anyone I absolutely love. So like I'll probably have a little bit wider of a pitching pool than I normally do on an 11 game slate. But yeah, he just barely makes the cut for me. Wouldn't play him on like 1 to 5 lineups, and even if I had 10 teams, I wouldn't play him. So don't want any bats in this game. It's a pretty big slate, and we can move on to some better spots here.
I'm with you there. Not going to play many, if any, bats at all from Astros Rays. Jordan Alvarez would be the guy if you're looking for a one-off, but I don't think you need to go there.
I mean, they're not getting excluded or anything, but I mean, nothing really catches my eye.
Yeah, makes sense. Up next, Oakland and the New York Mets. Another popular pitcher in this one. Looks like David Peterson could be one of, if not the most popular pitchers on this slate. It's a matchup against Oakland, who will be without, importantly, Brent Rooker. Going to miss this game. I think paternity leave for him. So a little bit of a watered down A's lineup, which is obviously a lineup to attack. Anyway, Peterson is cheap at 7,300. He's not a great pitcher by any means, but he has pitched well over the last 5 or 6 starts. He will typically give you, 85 to 100 pitches, so no real workload concerns there. And I mean, you get it. You get why he's going to be popular. Certainly the strikeout upside here is, against the A's is about as high as it's going to get for a guy like Peterson, so I get it. I do like him as well. And then Joey Estes pitching for Oakland. He's got some crazy splits where he's pretty good at home, and he has been horrific in 8 road starts, 7.5 ERA. He's given up 7 home runs. And he's also got the thing where he has big righty-lefty splits too, where he is much, much worse against left-handed bats, fewer strikeouts, more walks, more power, everything worse for Estes against lefties. You combine those two things, Bryce, his road splits and his splits against lefties. And I don't know, guys like Lindor, Nimmo, Winker, McNeil, these Mets lefties look pretty good to me against Joey Estes. They're certainly on my short list. Not that you can't play Martinez or Pete Alonso or any of these guys if you're going to the Mets, but it is the lefties that stand out to me and the guys that I'm most heavily targeting. I'll probably have a lot from this game. Decent amount of Peterson, and I'm getting these Mets bats in my lineups as well. What about you, Bryce?
Yeah, I think Oakland probably goes over-owned after their explosion last night. People just go right back to the well and play Oakland, New York. Yankees, that is. You see it all the time. It's baseball. I mean, I'm not playing Oakland just because they did well last night.
Yeah.
The argument for them last night was that, they're a somewhat high upside stack that's super cheap against, a pretty shocky pitcher in Blackburn. And, it's the same argument again tonight. So I'm going to have pretty much the same ownership here, 3 to 5%. Because I do think that has some upside. But I do prefer Peterson in this matchup. He will likely be my highest owned cheaper pitcher for sure. He should be, on this slate like high 8s. You can really fit in a ton of bats with him. So it's what it is. Probably 30 to 35%. Let the chips fall where they do in terms of his ownership. I don't imagine he gets over 30. I'd be pretty surprised, maybe in higher stakes. But I think that might be the only spot where he does. In terms of Mets bats, I don't like Estes. I don't really think I've played him much this year. Mets lefties, as you said, kind of stand out to me. I do prefer the Mets more as a stack as opposed to, like one-offs here. I think you gave a pretty good rundown of who to like here. My favorite individual bat would be Lindor.
Yeah, same Lindor. Definitely my favorite bat on the Mets. And yeah, I mean, Martinez and Alonso's prices have come down a little bit below 5K now, where I'm fine playing them without the platoon advantage as well. I think that the Mets could do some serious damage tonight for sure. Let's get to the next game on the slate. Yankees and the Chicago White Sox. Of course, Juan Soto coming off the 3 home run game last night. It's like another good spot for the Yankees, which is, every team and every pitcher facing the White Sox from now until the end of the season is going to be in a pretty good spot. It just kind of is what it is. But yeah, the Yankees, one of the higher, if not the highest team totals on the slate, sitting 5.6 runs or minus 250. And then Will Warren, rookie for the Yankees, going to pitch here. Been pretty rough for him in his first 2 starts, to say the least. ERA over 11 through 2 starts. He does get the White Sox here, though. And I think he's an okay type of prospect. So 7,700 for Will Warren, not a price you would consider for him in most matchups. But in this one, you at least have to take a second look at it, given that he is facing the White Sox. Curious what you're doing with Warren and how high on the Yankees are you, Bryce?
Yeah, I see Warren at 20%. I would be surprised if he gets there. If he does get there, I do want White Sox stacks, and I want to be under Warren. Kind of the opposite of the Mets type of game for me. Would rather hit Chicago here. I mean, picking out individual bats is pretty ugly, but nice thing is they're pretty much all cheap. You can pretty much do whatever you want if you play some Chicago bats. If you played, say, Benintendi and Sheets, those are 2-3K bats, and you can kind of do whatever you want with the rest of your team. So I'll likely be over on Chicago today, as ugly as it sounds. And Will Warren probably comes in around 10% for me. I do think anyone has some upside against this White Sox team. 7.7 is more than I want to spend for him, but it's, even though I do like the White Sox here, there's still upside for him to get 20, 25 points here. And it wouldn't surprise me at all. I think 20% of the market is way too high if that ownership projection does end up being correct. Yankees bats, I think I much prefer them as stacks. Just because you're not going to get multi-home run games every single day from Soto and Judge. And, eventually some of these guys around them are going to start producing well. And, the guys around them have been cheap and under-owned, in my opinion, pretty much this entire run that they've had. And I'm going to continue to play them. Guys like Verdugo, Wells, Glaber, Volpe, I always never get his name right. And Oswaldo Cabrera. Guys I don't really have much interest in, Trent Grisham and DJ LeMahieu. Trent more because of pinch hit res, DJ because I think he's complete dust. But yeah, I prefer the Yankees as 5-man stacks here, simply because I think a lot of people are just going to take Judge and Soto and then move on to a cheap 5-man stack. I think that's a super easy build to make by hand today. So I'm going to kind of go out of my way to make sure that I have Yankees 5-mans here, as opposed to just having, I'll still have 3-mans and 1-offs and whatnot, but that's just kind of a point I wanted to make. And, something I think is important about roster construction for by far the highest owned offense today. So yeah, I like the Yankees.
Yeah. Hard not to like the Yankees. I'm with you. We'll try to fit as many of those big bats as I can. Warren, so he was a pretty good strikeout arm coming up, but he had a ERA over 6 in 95 AAA innings this year. Gave up 1.7 home runs per 9, and he was in the pitcher-friendly international league. The PCL is much more hitter-friendly. So, the AAA hitters were kind of mashing him too. He's got a long history of giving up a lot of home runs. So it's hard to get excited about the White Sox. They just don't have very many good hitters. But Yeah, 20% for Warren feels high. I think I won't be surprised if it turns out to be true. I mean, he's a big favorite. He's expected to throw 90-plus pitches, so I get it. But I'm kind of with you. I'm not going crazy with the White Sox, but I think I want to be over the field, especially if Warren's going to get some ownership. I just don't trust him. I mean, there's no reason to. He sucked in his 2 starts at the big league level and really didn't deserve to get a call up from the minor leagues before that. So, yeah, as bad as the White Sox are, they're still better than most AAA lineups, I think. And, AAA bats were hitting them just fine. So I do think that White Sox stack as a contrarian option does make some sense. And, of course, Yankees, like I said, getting in as many Judge and Sotos and Stanton shares as I can personally. Dodgers and Milwaukee are the next game to talk about. We've got Walker Buehler going for the Dodgers, making his return from the IL. He's been hurt for seems like 3 years. He did pitch, 30 innings, I think, 37 innings earlier this year. Hasn't pitched since June 18th. Did not pitch particularly well when he was pitching, and he just seems like he's not healthy, and I don't know if he's going to be able to get healthy. I think he's going to kind of continue to get hit hard. So I think the Brewers are a little bit of a sneaky stack against Buehler, who hasn't pitched in, 3 months, 2 months? 2 months. So, I don't mind the Brewers. And then Frankie Montas traded over to the Brewers from the Reds, a guy who does give up a lot of power, especially to lefties. Looks like another awesome spot for Ohtani. The Dodgers, of course, recently got Mookie Betts back, and that top half of the Dodgers lineup looks pretty good to me, led, of course, by the man himself, Shohei Ohtani. No interest in either of these pitchers for me. Over to you, Bryce, for Dodgers and Brewers.
Get pitching out of the way real quick. 0 Buehler, small amount of Montas. He just has some strikeout upside. More of a 150 play than if I had 10 teams, I'm not clicking him. But, I'm not keeping him out of my pool, probably around 5% on him. That being said, top 5 Dodgers looks real nice to me today. You can even include a cheaper guy at the bottom of the order as get a little different and, a little cheaper. These guys, Ohtani, Betts, or Teoscar are kind of in Lux. Lux is cheap. The rest of them are pretty expensive. Teoscar, 4.8 is pretty reasonable. But, I think a majority of lineups click either Judge, Soto, or Ohtani today. It's just kind of the way things are going. Lack of expensive pitching combined with really high upside individual bats. I mean, you got these guys are going to be way owned as one-offs as opposed to 3 and 5 mans here. So I prefer the Dodgers and stacks today, kind of for the same reasoning. I prefer the Yankees, but I liked him slightly less than the Yankees. I'll likely be over them though. One of my favorite offenses of the day. I think the Brewers are a really good contrarian shout here. You can run on Buehler too. Really like guys like Bryce Turang. I don't see a Brewers lineup here yet. Refresh our page here. I don't see a Brewers lineup, but I'm expecting Turang to lead off. Chiriot, I think, is a good play. Garrett Mitchell, Willie Adames, Contreras would probably be my preferred 5-man stack here, with Turang being my favorite bat overall.
Yeah, love that. I will say, I think that's a good call. Good call with the Seals on Milwaukee as well. So, I think Brewers are going to go low owned here, and I think they are somewhat sneaky. I just don't trust Walker Buehler whatsoever. Sounds like we're on the same page on that one. Let's get to Toronto and the LA Angels over on the West Coast here. This one in LA, of course. Even money or close to it via the betting line. It is Tyler Anderson, the lefty, continues to get the job done for the Angels. I continue to not really be a believer, but he's undeniably has pitched well, at least results-wise. And then Jose Barrios going for the Blue Jays, coming off a very strong start against the Oakland A's. But he is on the road here, which has always given him problems. Hard guy to have confidence in. I do think against the Angels, he's at least worth discussing. Can't do $8,700 Tyler Anderson here, but I'm sure he'll pull the rabbit out of his hat once again. Bats-wise, got to shout out Vlad once again, just ripping the cover off the ball. He's going to be in play in any reasonable matchup. He certainly has that here. And then not a ton of Angels for me. It would be the lefty power, Nolan Shanuel, who I assume will be leading off. I think is the best play on the Angels overall. Bryce, what do you see? Toronto and the LA Angels.
Quick note about these two late games here. It's pretty likely we don't have lineups for them. So, like with the earlier start, it kind of makes me want to play them more. I love teams that we don't have their lineup from, just because like people don't click them simply because like they're not confirmed, and they're just kind of easy to toss out on an 11-game slate and forget about. So I'm probably going to be over the Blue Jays here for sure. Springer is expected in today. He sat yesterday. I think he plays today. So like, I'm kind of projecting him in, but like people won't play him just because like he sat yesterday and, they don't have a confirmed lineup. So yeah, I mean him, Vlad, Kirk, and, they have a bunch of cheap bats splattered throughout this lineup, especially at the bottom of the order. Guys like Jimenez, don't have the most upside, but, they allow you to fit, like, say you want to play like a Judge Ohtani lineup, it lets you do stuff like that you wouldn't normally be able to do in a 5-man. So kind of like Toronto today. Not a huge Tyler Anderson believer. I'm not clicking him out of my pool. I can't imagine I get much. I'm assuming I end up getting like 1 to 3 out of 150 teams with him. So yeah, not really my cup of tea today. But it is a somewhat limited pitching slate, and you can be a little price indifferent just because there are some cheap bats out there today. So I'll play a little bit of him. Would rather play some Barrios. Not a pitcher I love either. Probably around 5% on him. Angels, the stadium's been a better hitting park than most people have given it credit for. Yeah. And, it's not like we have like massive totals on the East Coast with like 100-degree weather and winds blowing out. So I prefer the Angels probably as smaller stacks. Like Shanuel, Neto is like, he's been so good, and he's been on a decent amount of my wins this year. Mm-hmm. He just seems to have more upside than the market gives him credit for. Would probably be my favorite two bats. And then can always include like a good hitting catcher as part of them. So prefer them as 3-mans. I'll have a couple of 5-mans in there, but nothing crazy on the Angels. I do like both of these teams more if we don't have their lineups before lock.
Yeah, you always see a little bit lower ownership, especially for teams that people aren't that excited to play anyway. I don't think many people are going to be on Toronto and the Angels. Springer got ejected yesterday. I think he got hit by a pitch, and the umpire said he didn't. And, I think he was tossed from that.
That's what happens. Yeah,
he should be in there tonight, George Springer. That was the main point. Would be surprised if he's not. And I do kind of think that top half of the Blue Jays lineup, if it comes in as expected, looks pretty good against Tyler Anderson. All right, brings us to the last game of the slate in San Francisco. It is Robbie Ray going for the Giants. Has pitched pretty well since coming back from a long-term injury. Has looked good for the most part in all 4 of his starts. Gets the Braves at home here. We saw Snell have a huge day against them. Harrison pitched pretty well yesterday. And they get the 3rd lefty in a row here, Robbie Ray, who I do think is he going to be the most popular pitcher on this slate. I think it'll be close between a few guys, but Robbie Ray. I think so.
I would be very surprised if he's not.
Yeah. So we're going to see chalk Robbie Ray, which I do get against the Braves for sure. I will say in his last start, he's only had the 4 starts after coming back from a very long absence. We did see decreased velocity across the board on his pitches. Could be, coming back from injury, just wasn't feeling his best or whatever. But I do worry a little bit about that. Sometimes, again, he hasn't pitched in so long. He makes 4 starts in a row. Maybe he's starting to wear down. The market doesn't seem to think so. They do have Ray favored here. Pretty low team total for the Braves, just over 3.5 runs. So I'll probably have one share of Robbie Ray in my 5 lineups, but I have enough concern there that I'll try to go elsewhere. Problem is, there's not very many other places to go. And then Grant Holmes, I think, is interesting here. Bryce, he's pitched pretty well for the Braves. Kind of started coming out of the bullpen, but he's been building up. And they let him go 98 pitches last time out in Coors Field. He was a full-time starter in the minor leagues. And listen, if you throw 98 pitches, you do it once, you can do it again, I presume. So I kind of view him as a full, full starting pitcher at this point. It's a Giants team with pretty big strikeout rates against right-handed pitching in general, and obviously a good park to pitch in San Francisco. So Grant Holmes, who I think is going to, Sabres got him below 10%, which seems, good to me. Kind of surprised that he was that low. I like him quite a bit. Grant Holmes there at 7,600. Not going crazy with bats in this game. I will say, maybe like a Jorge Soler, Austin Riley, Ozuna trying to get home runs against a chalk pitcher. I don't hate that play. What are you doing, Bryce, with the Giants and Braves here?
Do like Robbie Ray today. He'll be my highest owned pitcher, but nothing crazy. Like my highest owned pitcher today is going to be like, high 30s, maybe 40% on him at the highest. Not going to go over that. Like on some slates, you'll see it, be close to a lock or 60%. So, kind of shows that, while he is my favorite option on the board, it's not like he's by far the best or anything. So that being said, don't hate Brave stacks here against him. They're super expensive. No one's going to play them. Don't mind like a 3-man of like, definitely prefer the righties here. Like you're already going to be different by playing the Braves. I don't think you need to be like as different as playing like a Matt Olson type of deal. Like I think Soler, Riley, Ozuna, pretty much all the righties. Murphy, Arcia, Oriano, Merrifield. I don't think you need to go to a 5-man with them, but pick 3 and is kind of how I would play it if you do want to fade Robbie Ray. I'm a little bit higher on him than you are. I'd probably have him on 2 out of my 5 teams if I was playing a 5-man strategy today. Don't really want anything to do with the Giants hitters here. Not excluding them from the pool. It's just like you can't get every team in there, and I would rather play the Braves for direct leverage against the most popular pitcher on the slate, as opposed to a pitcher that should go under owned today. Kind of expecting Grant Holmes, and I even think that 8 or 9% is a little high on him. I think he comes in around 5%. Don't mind that shout. I'll likely be around 10% on him. As I said, it's a pretty deep pitching pool today, and there's guys I would normally exclude that I'm not excluding today, and he kind of falls into that bucket.
Yeah, when we did the last C-Ray for like a full season, it was back in 2022. 1.7 home runs per 9 given up to righties in that season, where he threw close to 200 innings. So on paper, at least, a pretty good spot for that top of the Braves lineup with all that power. Soler, Riley, Ozuna with the direct leverage, probably going to be the long ball if they get it done. Kind of think they're a fun contrarian group. They're expensive, unfortunately, but still, they do some damage late against Ray. You're going to be flying up the standings, given how many people have Ray and how few people are going to have the Braves. All right, that's all 11 games. Let's get to stacks, pitching, home runs, and favorite plays. Bryce, stacks. Need a contrarian stack and your favorite stack on this list.
Both are going to come from the same game. Favorite stack here is the Yankees. Favorite contrarian stack is going to be the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah, hard to argue with those. I will go. Let's look here. Favorite stack. I'm going with the Guardians. I like those lefties against Jameson, Tyone, and contrarian stack, I'm going with the Braves. I don't know if I'll play a 5-man, but I like that top half of the Braves lineup against Robbie Ray. Obviously, Ray could go off, but if you don't have him, you're probably, not doing that great anyway. And if the Braves do damage, good way to try to get yourself to the top of the tournament. Most important pitcher on this slate for you, Bryce. It sounds like you're spreading it around a little bit at SP today, but who do you think you're going to be most overweight on?
So I ran a blind run on Sabre here while we were on the show, and it says Edward Cabrera is my highest leverage pitcher. I'm not sure how much I believe that. I wouldn't be surprised if it was Ray, but I'm going to be pretty spread out a pitcher today. Normally, I can give you guys a super easy answer here, but I'll go with Robbie Ray.
I've got a pretty easy answer. I'm going to have a lot of Grant Holmes on this slate that he pitches well for the Braves, and it's got some legitimate upside against San Francisco. So really like Grant Holmes. The fact that he'll be, looks like pretty low owned, makes it all the more sweeter. Home run call, Bryce. Who's going yard today?
I'm going to go with Teoscar Hernandez. Get off the chalk a little bit.
Hard to argue with that. I'll go with Jorge Soler leading off for the Braves against Robbie Ray. Get that game started off right for people who are lower on Ray like me. Finally, your favorite hitter on the slate.
Shohei Ohtani.
I was going to name the same one. He's just the nut spot for Shohei here. So I'm with you there. I'll pick a different one, though. And I will go with – who do I like a lot? I like Jake Berger here. Jake Berger can play him at first or third. And he's been hitting well. He's a streaky dude, and I think he gets some – probably should have picked him for the home run call, but we'll go with Jake Berger as favorite play on the slate. That'll do it for this show. I think very short slates tomorrow. So I think, if anything, we'll have an early show at 11 Eastern time. I think there's 3 or 4 games. So stay tuned for that if we do decide to do it. And then on Friday, of course, we'll be back with a big show for Friday Night Fireworks. But that'll do it for today. Thanks for watching. As always, hopefully we'll see some RPS logos up top as usual. And that'll do it for Third and Schlong on Draft Sheet. We're out of here.